speaker card, and they're available at the back of the room. I have a stack of them here right now. I'll go through them. But again, if you do plan on speaking, you need to fill out a card. The first person that is going to come up this evening, Miles Weitzman. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I know you guys have done an exhausting job reviewing the groundwater situation that we have from the septic systems and that kind of stuff over the years. But I'm not here to complain about have issue with installing the source system. I do have an issue of the way we're funding it. And you know, in your back, I'm going to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous being up here, so excuse me. You guys originally put together, find page 1 here. Yeah, sewer expansion project initial assessment resolution. You guys are familiar with that. And starting at page 7. I'm sorry, you guys. That's right. Under section 1.0.3, on page 8, under paragraph C, you put in there, pursuant to the Smart Charlotte 2050 Comprehensive Plan, the county should develop a cost-effective sewer program with the intent of reducing the impact of pollutions on the natural environment, preserving groundwater quality. And then in paragraph D, it goes on to say, the MSBU have been determined to be a threat to the ecosystem due to the contamination of pollution measured in Charlotte Harbor. That's my point. You guys also had an environmental study by the Charlotte Harbor Branch Oceanic Institute. And on page 14, if you guys look at the second paragraph, it clearly shows that the septic systems do impact the water quality in the harbor, but the number one polluter is agriculture. And I just got to ask, I mean, you're going to bill all of us $11,500. How much are you billing these people? They're the number one polluter. We're a secondary polluter. And nobody here in his short report here, he said, yeah, we're putting 30,000 pounds of nitrogen, X amount of phosphates in the ground, but how much of that is taken up by nitrification? That's the process in which the stuff breaks down. It wasn't in the report. In the environmental reports, the short-term reports that you guys did put out, that we did look at, there's nothing there to indicate to me, because there's way short number of sample points needed over time, even back in like 2015. Some of the samples that were taken then were less than what the samples taken in 2019. So there really was no clear issue there. But there is a clear issue if you look at the reports that you guys ordered from these scientists. Clearly shows that the farmers, agriculture is the number one contaminator, and they're not paying a dime. How is that fair? It says in your assessment here that you thought that was fair and equitable. How is it fair and equitable that we're paying for it? We know it has to be done, but they're not paying a dime. So I ask you, how is it fair and equitable? That's really all I have to say. I mean, there's no question that the sewer system has to be installed, and these things are old, they're inadequate, the stuff's getting into the groundwater, but we shouldn't have to pay for those. All of it. I know you guys done a great job finding other sources of revenue, but it still doesn't. How come these guys, the farmers, the agriculture people, don't pay a dime? Why aren't we taxing the fertilizer people? How many thousands and thousands of pounds of fertilizer are they throwing on their land every year? Nothing in the study. And the other thing, you guys really haven't done much of an analysis of other ways of groundwater remediation. There wasn't anything about purge system, purge and on-site cleanup of these systems right now. What about current things that are going on? Like why would anybody build a house, pay $6,000-7,000 for a septic system if they're going to tear it out in 2 years and pay another $11,000 for? I mean, there's lots of other ways to do this. I mean, you got these stormwater runoff basins. I mean, why not do a Persian clean right there on spot? Try to eliminate. None of that was addressed in any of your reports. I didn't see anywhere in any of the reports the construction of the monitor wells, the gradients of the water flow, any of that. I don't know if it's even available, but I'm going to look into it. None of that stuff was on the project website.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you very much. Next will be Pat Harris, and again, failed to mention you have 5 minutes. When you have 1 minute remaining, the orange light will go on. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure you all know that from all the viewpoints in the paper, there have been very good reviews for the sewers, and that's fine. But we all know every story has 2 sides. And tonight, we're going to hear the other side. Sewer overflow causes untold problems. Hundreds of thousands of gallons of water erupt in streets and rivers. We all know that. The volume of spills have risen in 2019. We had over 29 spills, and the volume is significant, 193,175 gallons. These, however, do not include those that are told that have less than 1,000 gallon spills. On April 18th, we had a sewage line break that spilled 160,000 gallons of raw sewage in a retention pond. 41% of these spills are caused by electrical or electronic components, 24% by contractors, and only 3% by sewage pipe failure. How can a county plan more sewers and justify them when you cannot take care of the ones you have? Sewers spill hundreds of thousands of gallons when they fail. Septic systems don't all fail at the same time, and they certainly don't spill 100,000 gallons or more. We still have not seen proof that Spring Lake sewers have even moderately improved water quality. How many studies, if any, have been done? And if there is not at least a 40% improvement, then this is a huge waste of money better spent replacing aging sewers rather than applying Band-Aids. I'd like to know if others in Charlotte outside Spring Lake area have been paying their MSBU fees. Our systems in the Ackerman area have been monitored for 15 years. The county cannot or will not promise that sewers will significantly improve soil and water in the Ackerman area. New homes are being built with permits being issued for septic systems. And you have the nerve to tell us ours have to go? I don't care how improved they are. A septic is a septic is a septic, and they all perform the same service. Government wants to spend money from we the people. Officials, please remember that government has no money that is not provided in one way or another by the people. And we have the right and the obligation to see that they quit spending money as fast as they can come up with plans to assess or tax us for more of their ideas. You represent the people. Please listen to them. You are harming people in the areas who are living at the top of their means and surviving from day to day. They would have to take a lien. They've been in the paper. I'm sure you've all read cases of it. They'd have to take a lien on their homes or sell their property. Who in their right mind is going to buy a home that has a lien on it? And basically, that's what you're doing when you're paying for this over 20 years. You've got a lien on your home. The other sewer project got a significant discount for coming forward with the money. How come Ackerman doesn't get this? Adding insult to injury, we have an aerobic system that is better than the average septic. And we are being punished and penalized, and if it's true, we're being told we will be responsible for removing the aerobic system. I don't think so. What's the reason? Does it cost more money? Well, there wasn't anything said. It was supposed to be that you remove the septics. If you don't want to spend the money, well, guess what? I don't care to spend money for something I don't want or need either.
Ms. Harris, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Next, I have Bob Mudge. Again, Mr. Mudge, you'll have 5 minutes. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am Bob Mudge, and I reside within the proposed Akron MSBU boundary. I'm a retired attorney and practiced law for 30 years in Wisconsin and Minnesota before moving to Port Charlotte in 2001. Last week, I sent a letter to Attorney General Moody and copied all of you. The reason for the letter was to outline my position of the county's illegal use of MSBUs as a funding mechanism for sewer projects. Historically, MSBUs are set up for residents of a designated area to provide services for that area that were small in nature and easily paid for only by the affected residents of the MSBU. MSBUs were never designed to be used for massive capital projects such as these sewers. Since 2012, the county has been on a mission to convert all septic systems located in the county to municipal sewers. The first large residential MSBU sewer project was East and West Spring Lake. The construction costs were estimated to be $17,700,000 to be paid by the MSBU property owners in yearly installments over 20 years. Almost immediately, the project cost went to $27 million. And by May 9th, 2017, it was discussed at a meeting of the Charlotte County Board of Commissioners that the cost had increased to over $36 million, with costs still being incurred to this day. There's a link to a 12-minute video of the meeting in my letter. The discussion was how was this extra $19 million cost overrun going to be paid when the residents were only obligated to pay $17 million. Then Director of Charlotte County Utilities, Gary Hubbard, and Budget Director Gordon Berger told the board that $8.8 million was taken from Charlotte County utility reserves and the balance pulled from all different areas of the county's capital improvement projects to cover the shortfall. Capital improvement projects, as you know, are primarily funded by ad valorem taxes. The reason that I sent this letter to Attorney General Moody with copies to Auditor General Norman and Interim Director of Property Tax Oversight Crehan is due to the complexity of the legal, tax, and accounting issues for a project of this size. I asked those agencies to investigate whether payments made by the county from county funds and Charlotte County utility reserves were legally made to pay the cost of the offsets and overruns incurred in the West Spring Lake Sewer Project. An article in today's paper, which deals with my letter, quotes Budget Director Berger. These projects are paid for by the one neighborhood, which in the case of East and West Spring Lake, plus utility rate payments, plus grants. He says no ad valorem taxes were used to fund the subsidy. In the video I attached to my letter, Berger clearly states that $8.8 million in CCU reserves, along with dollars pulled from all different areas of county capital utility projects, which are ad valorem taxes, were used to pay off the balance. Which of these scenarios are correct? This shows why it is necessary for outside Florida state agencies to review the entire history of the East and West Spring Lake MSBU and to find out what is really taking place in the way of funding and payments. Let me make a records request right now for the CIP payments Mr. Berger referenced in the video. Those records should include the date, the amount, and which CIP funds the monies were taken from. It is my position that given the inquiries I have made, that it would be in the best interest of the county to table this matter until a response is received from the state agencies, either validating your use of MSBUs and the manner of using them to fund the sewer projects or not. You have hundreds of millions of dollars of projects in your long-range plan. It is imperative that if MSBUs are to be utilized, that they are done properly and within the law. I realize that you have a schedule that has to be followed in your MSBU approval process, and that tabling this may very well void the schedule for this year, but it certainly seems worth it to get this right. This is a very complex issue, and certainly one of first impression, which will make all the agencies considerable time for investigation prior to rendering an opinion.
Your time is up. Thank you very much, sir.
I would like to just include my letter as part of
Give that to the deputy. Thank you, sir. Next, Arthur Grimes. There you go. Good evening, sir. Again, you'll have 5 minutes.
Is that up there?
There you go.
I hit the wrong button there. Oh well. I should know better. Anyway, I missed the festivities last week, by the way, a veteran here standing in front of you. I was going to make a script out of this. The cash issue, I think, the 11,000, as I understand, is going to come out of their individual owners' funds and so forth. I have a court case here. It's too bad Jeanette's not here today. From 2000, and it's called Key Citizens for Responsible Government versus the Florida Keys Aqueduct. They used a sewer revenue bond, series of sewer revenue bonds to help finance this sort of thing. I could say, take it out of petty cash out of the county, but that might fall a little heavily on some people. I don't really have a dog in this fight, thank you. I don't really have a dog in this fight. I'm up on Cork Tree Circle next in the Oak Hollow property owners. I do have a canal next to me, and I used to be on the board of directors and on the environmental committee. I do know that in studying that sort of thing and being a property manager, that septic systems, for example, if they're nice and new and kept up and so forth, yes, they work just fine. Sewer systems, the same thing. I've read studies in here that say that in Ohio, for example, back in 1984, there was a court ruling there that inherently septic systems, Ohio Supreme Court, are inherently more dangerous to public health than the sanitary sewage systems must be replaced when possible. I suppose that's something of a matter of opinion. If I keep up my home that's now 30 years old, I spend a lot of money replacing things, keeping the air conditioning working, replacing stucco, things like that. Over a period of time, it takes money to keep that thing in somewhat decent condition. If it was brand new, piece of cake, that's easy to do. On the other hand, the septic systems, any kind of system that leaches anything into the soil, obviously, can pose a problem. I live next to a canal. And living next to a canal, I've learned in some condos, for example, they just go out and take oil, for example, that they drink out of a car and dump it into the ground. I talked to the state about that, and they said, no, we don't like things like that happening. It leaches into the canals, it leaches in, and it affects the life in there, the fish and so forth. Now, with that in mind, I noticed too that there's, and I'm not sure, I get the impression that this is, kind of a matter of choice here for some, and I have a law here that I found the other night, 381.00655. The owner of a property owning functioning on-site sewage treatment and disposal must connect to the system of the building's plumbing to an available publicly owned or investor-owned sewage system within 365 days. So I'm kind of, confused here at the moment, not having researched this enough yet, about the problem here. I realize this is a lonely job for you. I was on my board 3 or 4 times before, having made decisions on that board that affect people, including their fines and what they're going to pay for assessments, is not always a very pleasant thing to do. So with that in mind here, I can see both sides of the argument on this, and I can see people wanting to keep their sewer systems that have had for a long time. Many people have had them for many years, and certain septic systems have a long history, both in this country and in other countries where they began. We didn't have any septic system not too many years ago. So in this case, to stretch it out, have a decently run sewage system, and be able to keep it up, if they can keep it up and keep it running well, might be a plus. If I had a choice right now between having to spend all the money out to keep my home up, for example, and tie into, one that's paid for by someone else, I think the decision wouldn't be too difficult. So for me, if I had to keep a septic system going for years and put it in and keep it up, I think I might opt for a sewage system that someone else is going to pay for and keep that thing going for me, if they do a decent job at doing that. So, as I say, one of my issues here at the moment is the cash system. If it is at all possible, as I'm understanding it, to be able to use bonds to do this sort of thing, revenue bonds, might be a better idea than what seems to be taken out of the residents themselves. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, Susan Hunt. Susan Hunt. Again, you'll have 5 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. Who pays the portion of the MSBU that is not covered by the ratepayers or the taxpayers in the designated areas? Looking back to the Spring Lake sewers and lessons learned, will this MSBU document for our sewers include a clause to bar the price from increasing? You did not include that in the Spring Lake sewers. I would like a guarantee, if we're going to be stuck with these things and stuck with your $575 a year for 20 years, I would like a guarantee that it's not going to go up. My income doesn't go up. I'm sure 4 of you remember that the people's objection to what we referred to as the blank check clause in the Spring Lake Sewer MSBU. The blank check clause is what we referred to as the means that the Spring Lake sewers could increase the amount of the MSBU if they so chose. That is still in effect in the MSBU. I don't want to have a blank check clause for the government to be able to come back to my pockets if you decide that you need more money for the sewers, or if something should go wrong with them and you need more money and you're going to take it all from us. Please show your concern for our financial situations and include a clause in this resolution stating that our cost will not go over $11,500 for the 20-year period. Give us that modicum of assurance, please. I recall Spring Lake taxpayers were also offered a cash discount if they made a reduced lump sum payment of $7,000. I think it was 90-some residents paid the $7,000 fee if that was allowed to be implemented. As I recall, somebody discovered, oh, oops, the MSBU people all have to pay the same amount. So I'm not certain what ended up really happening with that. But I haven't seen an option for that for us Ackerman taxpayers. Why not? I recall a video about the Spring Lake taxpayers getting the cheapest sewers ever. I recall Director Terry Kuchar saying that the project of the utility department, all their projects always came in under budget. I almost choke. Surely those of you who voted for the Spring Lake sewers can remember how the cost of the project was fluid instead of fixed. Started out, it was going to be a $10 million project. It climbed to $13 million, $17 million, $27 million. The last figure I recall hearing about the cost was that the cost was $36 million. I doubt that was the end. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I doubt any of you will want to admit that the total cost of Spring Lake sewers went up and up and up. Your hearts may have been in the right place, but you couldn't control what the total project cost. Do you have a solid cost estimate for the Ackerman sewer project at this time? If not, you shouldn't tie us to something that you're not sure about. And I urge you to approve a revision of the MSBU document tonight, if you're going to pass it, to never increase the $11,500 fee. Put something in it that fixes it.
You don't have plans ready yet, 90% of the plans for the Ackerman area, but the rest of the plans aren't ready yet. How do you know how much it's going to cost you? You're guessing. They're guesstimates, and they are not estimates at this point in time. You have no bids. I remember the shock when the first bids came in for some other projects in the county, and projects had to be revised. On another topic, has the statute been altered regarding the aerobic septic systems? Are people going to be allowed to keep their aerobic systems? And if they have, why are they going to be required to remove them? Apparently you want them to remove them. But why are you giving them an extra hardship over removing their septics, and you're going to crush our tanks for us? Why is it that Charlotte County is allowing 2 new subdivisions to be built with septic systems, but we have to pay the utility departments to destroy ours and maintain sewers? This doesn't seem to be equitable to the citizens. I have a whole lot more I could say. You've heard it all before. These were the new things. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanley. Stanley. And you will have 5 minutes, sir.
Good evening,
Good
Commissioner.
evening.
I think I stood basically here 5 years ago, and I started out with a bunch of tax certificates in my hand and said, why aren't you genuine with these people and say it's all about money, utilities, deficit, and debt? Okay, I heard Terry Kuchar give a presentation where 25% of a pie chart was going to interest on the debt to utilities that the previous commission back in the 90s bought. This is very offensive to me. Be honest. We have a problem. Don't lay it off on DEP and a manufactured agreement with the Manchester Lock and Ackerman Waterway. 5 years ago, I defied you, the county, to prove to me that my septic system is polluting the canal across the street. Why did I do that? I've had it pumped 3 times in 15 years. I'm a 20-year resident. The last 2 times it was pumped, it was certified functional fine and didn't need pumping per the pumper. Okay? This is, and that's 2 different pumpers. This is ludicrous. On top of that, do I sound incensed? I am. I believe you, the county, the government, is affecting my constitutional right. You are going to charge me to crush and destroy my personal property that was licensed, platted by State Health Department back in '91 when the house was built. You're going to destroy it and then force me to pay to hook up to a sewer system that I don't want nor need. We are in a very underutilized area. Okay, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath pool home with 2 people. We have neighbors that are snowbirds, Canucks, Canadians, Europeans. They're not here but 3, 4 months of the year, maybe. They're not even in rental programs. This is obscene, what you're doing. Why didn't you put this thing to a vote initially? On West Spring Lake, you did. You put out cards. My wife, Susan Hutt, went and photographed the results because nobody wanted to publish it. It was anti-sewer, pro-septic. And if you look at the numbers of malfunctioning septic tanks, it was very, very small. Very small. Why don't you go and enforce septic inspection and mandatory pumping per state health code across all septic systems? And guess what? Before you implement the sewer, go measure what your pollution level is, because I have not seen any figures that make any sense or any metrics that can support your abuse of waste of my money, okay? My money, their money, people's money, to put in something they don't want nor need. But what is the constitutional right you have to mandate me to destroy my personal property and then tax me? And it's a tax. This is all about money. Why don't you be honest? Go out and say, hey, our utility is mismanaged and beyond repair financially, okay? Unless you just implemented 3 years, 7% compound. And I guarantee you, when that 3 years is up, you guys, I know you're going to vote 5%, 5%. Add that up, okay, over a water bill, okay? Now you're going to put in a sewer system and charge me 5,000 gallons in and 5,000 gallons out plus a base fee. You're going to double plus my water bill. You are not honest with your constituency and the taxpayer. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is John Cooper. And you will have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, I don't know whether you'll pay much attention to me because I believe I went to a meeting 4 or 5 years ago downtown somewhere talking about the same subject, and I'm going to tell you some of the same things over again, and I agree with most every speaker that's been here tonight. But then, who knows, I'm just a Canadian immigrant that's been here about 25 years, so that may not count much. Anyhow, the first speaker stole my thunder. And it'll shorten it up a little. I hope I don't go over. And anyhow, the agriculture is the main polluter, I believe, here and in most of the states, and the world as far as that goes. And to just start off, just to give you an example, it takes 600 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of milk and 2,500 gallons of water to make 1 pound of hamburger. Plus all the farting and shitting and everything else that the cows do, and the fertilizer and everything. This is what's polluting the river upstream, and you want us to fix up and improve or replace our septic tanks, which I see some merit to it. I don't say it's wrong, but you're hitting the wrong end of the cow. Do that first, then take your tests, and then come to us with some good things. And if you can afford Netflix, and if you can't, call me. Go to get a movie there called Cowspiracy and watch it. You may learn something. And it'll be good for your entertainment also. The other thing is, talking about the septic tanks, I haven't wiped my bum in 15 years. And I guarantee it's cleaner than every one of you, or likely almost everybody in the room here. Seeing you got around 50 pounds of water pressure in the water, that's what I wash it with every time I go. And if you need help, call me again. Go to Amazon, and for $30 you can buy a bidet that fits under your toilet seat, and you can likely find a plumber friend that'll install it for 10 or 15 bucks. And think how many trees you'll save, and how much, even if you put sewers in, you don't have this bloody toilet paper to put up with. I mean, it's such a simple thing, but you know, you can't think of it. I used to be an oil field contractor in Canada. And when I see you building Edgewater there for 3 years or whatever it was, recently around the harbor, around the pool, the parking lot, the way you take so long and waste money, it's disgraceful. If this is the way you guys are building sewers, you guys should all be fired. And I think I give the county permission to finance a toilet bidet for every house in the county of Port Charlotte. And don't charge it to their taxes.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mark Stevens. Again, sir, you have 5 minutes. Good evening.
Hard to beat that performance. I came here mainly because I am from the Spring Lake area. I have come down here and we were discussing that. And we had conflicting views on whether we needed sewers or we should have our septics. And amazingly enough, that same discussion is still going on, and nothing really has been brought to anyone's attention that supports either side. But yet my water bill has gone up by over double. I have an assessment on my home. I get to hear the beautiful sound of a vacuum station. Every time someone flushes and it starts to build pressure, the thing gives you this good. It's great to hear that, and then you get the nice odor that comes from that. Never had that with my septic system. What bothers me, I think, most of all, is each one of you were elected by us, the people, to represent us and our beliefs and feelings. Unfortunately, we all come out here and I look at the room here and say, you know, that's a pretty good assembly of your constituents, but we're not being heard. And that's the part that bothers me more than anything else. We need to communicate with this. Give us that satisfaction. I mean, we were at the other facility up in Murdoch for that last hearing. We did the Spring Lake thing. And you're my commissioner, and we must have had, I don't know how many speakers and how many different things. But you know what? You still voted for the doggone sewer. Well, so much for representing me, and I appreciate that. To say the least, it's going to be kind of hard to get a vote from me. And you're all voted, and you voted in for us. And you're representing us, and you're spending our money, and we're paying you. So it's real important that, please, give us that much consideration and respect as we give you. You haven't done all bad jobs, trust me. I mean, you're probably the most thankless job in the county. It's very rare that you're going to get someone come and say, hey, you're doing an outstanding job. But by the same token, you don't want to have someone come up there and say, hey, how come I say one thing and you do another thing? You're supposed to be taking care of me, and you're not. So, for the people of Ackerman, all I can tell them is, look forward to having your prices go up considerably. Look forward to having, you know, these unpleasant noises on every other lot where they put these little vacuum stands. And also make sure you go out and vote for the people that are going to represent you and listen. That's the key word, listen. So I'll leave it to your judgment, but I unfortunately think that it's already a prejudged thing. And I hope it's not, that you'll give it some more consideration and go ahead and maybe say, you know, maybe there's a different way to do this and save costs and save money. Because right now it's not happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Chief Wilson. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
5 minutes.
I'd like to begin by saying that in theory I support your idea about getting rid of septic tanks and putting in a central sewer system. But I have 4 questions that I would like the answers to. The first one is, when will the construction of the Ackerman sewer project begin and when will it be completed?
We don't respond during the public hearing, but people will take notes and after the hearing try to address your questions.
I just like to have that added. The second thing is, why is there no provision in there to compensate homeowners who have a septic tank that is currently certified to be okay when you institute this project, you're going to come in and crush our septic tanks. Why is there no compensation if I have a properly working septic tank? That's question number 2. Number 3, how did we determine that 2020 was the year we're going to start assessing homeowners to pay for the septic, for the sewer system, when you don't have a beginning date or an end date and you can't tell us? If I go into a dealership and buy a car or a store and buy any product, I pay for that product and I get that product. Even in the case of a car, where I go in and put it on time payment, when I walk out of that dealership having completed that deal, I have the car in my possession. Why is it that we're not waiting until you deliver the sewer system to start paying for that sewer system? And the last one, how long has Charlotte County been planning to install a sewer system, a central sewer system? I can answer that question for you because in 1968, that was put out as a general plan. Charlotte County was going to be a planned community with a central sewer system. So at least since 1968, past commissioners and present commissioners have been in the process of trying to plan for this, which includes budgeting for this. And therefore, I bring up the question, what the heck are you guys doing? If you've known since 1968 you were going to do this, why are you not budgeting for this? And why are we now suddenly being asked to pay for a sewer system that hasn't been properly planned for? You should have known about this and it should have been done years ago. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is David Besser. Good evening, sir. 5 minutes, also.
Does anyone need to sign in here?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, here we are again. Nobody at this meeting wants polluted water. But there's no definitive proof that sewers are better than septics. The evidence is to the contrary. The Charlotte County sewer system takes all the sewage and concentrates it while wasting millions of gallons of water. When there is a spill, it's a large, concentrated amount of sewage. On the other hand, when a septic system doesn't function properly, there may be some leakage, but seldom is it completely raw and unfiltered, and it's a very small amount. An article by the Sun, Sentinel, describes more than 2.5 million gallons of raw sewage spewing into South Florida's neighborhoods and waterways from government sewers. The sewage killed fish, forced the shutdown of drinking water wells, and resulted in at least 3 beach closures. State environmentalists blame most of the breaks on failure to maintain and replace old pipes. Why doesn't our Sun newspaper report on our many, many spills? According to the Florida Times-Union in Jacksonville, just this year, more than 900,000 gallons of raw sewage flowed into Sarasota Bay from sewers, not from septics. Jacksonville, Daytona Beach, each spilled a 250,000 gallons of human waste from sewers. According to a Gatehouse Media analysis of state environmental data, deteriorating sewers have released 1.6 billion gallons of wastewater, much of it polluting the state's estuaries and oceans. More than 370 million gallons of that was completely untreated. 100,000 gallons of sewage spilled in Hardy County, just upriver from us. Venice, Florida, 449 gallons of sewage just north of us. Manatee County, 70,000 gallons spilled, again, just north of us. Keep in mind southern flowing Gulf Stream. 700,000 gallons spilled into Stevenson Creek in Pinellas County. The septics had just been converted to the new sewer system just a few years before that. In a series of other spills on the same rainy day in Pinellas, 614,000 more gallons of sewage. Manatee County, 75,000 gallons discharged into the Manatee River. Pinellas County, 93,000 gallons. Same rainy day, another area, Pinellas County, 85,000 gallons. 93,000 gallons raw wastewater, Davenport, Florida. These are only a few examples of pages of government sewer spills. The Charlotte County Utilities Director suggested fixing 1% of the current sewer system per year in our county and was told by the commissioners, I think it was too aggressive or to soften it. Yeah, soften it. There's no way Charlotte County will have the money to maintain new sewers. There's no way. They can't maintain the old ones. A broken, unmaintained sewer system is far worse than a few failing systems. Most people actually take care of their own septics. The following is a very small selection of evidence from DEP reports that sewers are bad for Charlotte County taxpayers and the environment. I'm only giving you a very small sample of hundreds of spills in Charlotte County. Some spills, I'm sure, go unreported. Keep in mind the temptation of government officials to underestimate as well. For a long time, the sewer lift station at McGuire Park would overflow and spill in a major way every time we had a strong rainstorm. There'd be pumper trucks at the park every time it rained hard. Who knows how many thousands upon thousands of gallons of sewage flowed into the lake, maybe 200 feet from the pump station, and surrounded by sewers. And it was one of the worst environmental fiascos tested by Atkins anywhere from what I read. During Hurricane Irma, an estimated 500,000 gallons of reuse water and 122,000 gallons of raw sewage was spilled from sewers in Charlotte County. Tamiami Trail, 10,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from government sewers. Coliseum Boulevard, I think somebody mentioned it, 160,000 gallons from a sewer main. Burnt Store Road, 17,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from government sewers due to a leak. Port Charlotte, 12,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from government sewers due to a line break. Deep Creek, 10,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from government sewers due to a blockage. Edgewater Drive, 30,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from government sewers due to a line break. Elkham Boulevard, 14,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from government sewers due to a line break. Harbor Boulevard, 8,000 to 10,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from a line break. Harbor Boulevard, 15,000 to 25,000 gallons of raw wastewater spilled from a line break not far from a canal. Tamiami Trail, 5,000 to 8,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from a power outage. Lake Worth Boulevard, 6,000 gallons of raw wastewater spilled from a pump failure. Biscayne Drive, 5,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled from a line break. Port Charlotte, 5,000 gallons of raw wastewater spilled from government sewers due to heavy rainfall. When it rains here, the sewers just go crazy. Olean Boulevard, 5,000 gallons spilled from Charlotte County government sewers.
Mr. Kessler.
Pinehurst Road, 38,000, 3,000.
Your time is up,
It just
sir.
keeps going on and on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Warren. I apologize, Warren. Where?
I pass.
You pass? Very good. Just the record show. Has chosen not to speak. Next speaker, Kim Zwolinski. Good evening. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Kim Malinsky, and I just had a couple of questions. I know that you don't answer, but I do have a really nice new septic system that I put in. I had to get permitted for it. It is a aerobic treatment unit, so I paid twice as much to have it put in, and I am required by your laws to have it inspected twice a year, which I pay for. And so I know that I'm not causing any damage, so I'm wondering if, again, there's going to be any leeway in there as to people who have new sewers, and I know this has been mentioned before, but I do want it on the record. In listening to all of this too, just switching lanes a little bit, just in my basic observation, it just seemed that it's not an environmental issue that we have here. It is definitely a financial issue, with Charlotte Utilities being the main problem. There hasn't been any research that I've seen. The research that I have seen has been shoddy at best for the reason why we're doing this. Anytime you're trying to fix a problem, I think that you would do a little bit more research, especially if you're going to spend $30 million of other people's money. And I don't believe that the research, I know that if you had a project that you were paying $30 million for out of your pocket, I believe that your research would have been a whole lot better. And like the gentleman here at Spring Lake, you are generating revenue. This is a money generating revenue for Charlotte County. And, at some point, I think I would have more respect for you if you just said it, because that's exactly what it is. I get it. You don't have any money. I get it. I understand. But for you to say that it's an environmental issue and to come up with this, I'm not buying it. But again, with the ATUs, if you could look into that. And I did see in one place, 2 different places where you were going to pay for it to be removed, and in another place where I was going to have to pay for it. So if I want to know why I have to pay for an ATU to be removed, one that's twice as expensive and more efficient, if you were, concerned about environmental purposes. And if that is the case, is the county going to remove it? Am I going to be responsible for removing it? There definitely needs to be more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ralph Desore, something? I apologize. The Caesar? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I will be very brief. The reason I came here this evening is to get clarification on certain issues and some questions answered, and I'm understanding that you're not here to answer any questions. So part of my issue, and the reason why I'm here, has been addressed already. I too have an aerobic treatment system on my property, and I've heard and I'm reading that I would be responsible to crush and or remove that system when the new septic or the new sewer system goes in. So is that true? And if so, why? What separates me from a normal septic system?
We will take that question down. Like I said, after the public hearing, we'll attempt to answer questions from staff.
What's that? Tonight or?
Yes, tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Point of order, sir. Sir, ask all your questions now. You have, that's great. Just ask all your questions when we close the public hearing, then we'll answer the questions. Tonight. So if you have other questions.
Well, there's one other thing. I read somewhere if I didn't fill out I forget what it's called, then I would have to pay for hookup or something. Is that? I don't have any information.
You have multiple lots.
I do not have multiple lots, no.
You'll be charged one ERU.
Point of information, it's an on-lot requirement, so you have to sign a document that allows us to work on your property to do the connection. That's all it really entails.
Okay.
We have to have the right to access to it by you.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Next, Christine Round. Good evening.
I guess I'm in agreement with everybody else in the audience. I don't know that there is a scientific, some people say that sewers are better, but if your septic system needs to be pumped, you know it. You're going to pump it. And guess where they take the stuff to? To the sewage treatment plant. It gets there by a different means. You can't go with a bad septic system. There is a personal motivation to make sure that it's working. There are also very good products. One of them is Green Pig, which is a, excuse me if I'm nervous, it's an excellent bacteria which heats the solids. It's very inexpensive and keeps septic systems working well. The other thing is, when you have a septic system, you're dealing with a very small amount of pipe, maybe 20, 30 feet, 2 or 3 joints. Everybody knows that things fail at joints. Now you're going to pump the sewage with electricity through hundreds of miles, I guess it's hundreds, I don't know, but it's very far to the treatment plant. Every one of those joints has the potential to eventually leak, and some of the old piping is of a substandard older product, which again can break and leak. The septic system is far better. Also, you are putting everything to one point. You are causing people to destroy their systems. What happens if there is an attack on the United States? What happens if there is a terrible storm? The electricity is out for a long, long time. We can't go to the bathroom. Everything is gonna back up into people's tubs and sinks, and it's gonna cause diseases. It's taking away American independence and making us vulnerable. You should not put all your eggs in one basket. Plus, it is very difficult for people to manage what nature does naturally and freely for us. You say these houses are old and the septic systems, well, obviously in the 60s, we didn't have the pollution we have now. Maybe some of the measurements are coming from the spills that the other people are talking about. How do you know that it's from septic? I think septic is the greatest thing in the world, and you should not make America vulnerable by putting all of our waste to one place.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Marlene Duncan. Good evening.
Thank you very much for hearing me. My name is Marlene Duncan, of course, and I'm an alien resident, which means I come from Canada and I'm only here for 6 months of the year. I chose Port Charlotte because the people, the prices were manageable. We have a wonderful neighborhood. I'm one of 8. We are one of 8 alien residents in our neighborhood. Some of us are only here for 2 months of the year. I don't think there's a great impact on the environment because we are only here for a short time. Filling our septic would be quite a stretch. We love America, basically from the Constitution, by the people and for the people. And we brag all the time that America's a good place to live. I think the point I want to make is being from Canada and from a sewer system and coming to a septic system, it was quite a learning curve. I had to learn that there's things you can't do. You have to be more mindful of your system. Paper you use, excuse my language, but if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. And in the city, the sewer people, they dump all kinds of things down the sewer system because they pay for it, they don't care. So I think what we really need to look at here isn't really that bad. Like, we may have to go back to basics someday. Are we going to do that with the sewer system? Probably not. So that's my point. I think you need to let people be, don't insult their intelligence. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Gary Polanski. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Commissioner. I'll keep this short because I think most people have stated pretty much what my beliefs are, and I'm not looking to rehash the information. My thoughts are this: just like the last speaker, my wife and I moved down here to Port Charlotte. It's a beautiful area, a little piece of heaven. So I understand you wanting to keep the waters clean, everything else. But if you look out at your constituents here, most people here we are either fixed incomes or have limited resources, and it ends up creating an unnecessary financial burden when you turn around and look at the money that you're looking to levy on us, whether it be annually over 20 years, or if we're offered the option of one lump sum payment, which would be difficult probably for most people to come up with. With that being said, you look at how much are the costs going to be, and the question comes up from everybody here, we don't have a total cost. We have an assessment that we believe it may run into this area, so we're coming with an estimate. We can't write the blank check. It's difficult. You have people that come down here and they want to live and they retired here, and when you put on the hardships where we have a lien or assessments placed on us, even if we can't afford to stay and we want to try to sell, it'll be much more difficult to sell a house once there's a lien on it. And so you have to look at the folks that are here. They are the taxpayers, they're constituents. Please listen to them. And people always talk and vote on the topics at hand. And the bottom line is, the elections are up again in 2020 and 2022. And that'll be right in the midst of this project, where most people will be in the middle of paying the assessments. And I'm sure that that will be a topic at hand when it comes down to voting and which route they choose to vote. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Robert McCracken. Good evening, sir. Sir, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Robert McDuffie. I just want to say that I pray for you. I do. I'm not kidding. My faith and my belief says to pray for those who rule over you. And I say that very genuinely. And I love you. You know, I know most of you don't really know me, nor do I know you, just a figure in the face. But I spend most of my time in Africa. And these things are extraordinary luxuries that we're talking about. Most of the places where I spend most of my time, I don't even have the luxury of electricity, much less a septic tank or a sewer, as do not more than 5 million people in the world today. We are extraordinarily rich in this country. I am amazed at how much wealth surrounds me when I come back here. It's always a culture shock to come back to a country where you can just step into a Walmart 24/7 and everything is at your fingertips on the internet, delivered within 2 or 3 days, usually for free. I just want to share with you something that I learned from the Rotarians, which are all over the world and seek to make a difference, just like I do, just like you do in your positions. It's called the 4-question test. The first question is it true? At the end of the day, there's nothing that's ever been done in darkness that has not been brought to light. The truth is so important. One day, every one of us is going to take our final breath. It's so important to live in the light of the truth. The truth is so much easier to remember the next day than a lie. The second question, is it fair to all concerned? Another way of saying it is the way that my Lord Jesus said it. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, not do unto others as they did unto you. I try to live my life that way, to do unto other people what I would want them to do unto me. That's a proactive thing, not a reactive thing. If you look at my bank account, I work very diligently in the businesses that I own here and abroad, so I can give away the majority of everything that I own. In fact, I have very few material possessions, just because I love people and I want to better their lives. Is it fair? The third question is, does it build goodwill and better friendships? I hear a lot of bitter voices here in this crowd because they're upset, because they don't really believe that elected representation works. They want you to hear and they want to know that they've been heard. Just like you want to know that I've heard you as another person, not as an elected official. And finally, is it beneficial to everyone concerned? Not just in the short term. I look at Florida, maybe you don't know this about me, but my kids are 6 generations this community. Ironically, great-granddad was the first plumber here, Curly Ewald Plumbing. Just as a side note. And I look at the infrastructure of the state of Florida, and I think I don't need a wall to keep people from coming from Central South America. I think we need a wall to keep people from coming into Florida. This ecosystem is failing very rapidly, and we're in a state of denial. We're flush with cash today, but at what cost tomorrow? I remember the Johnny Mitchell song, "We paved paradise and we put up a parking lot." What are we really leaving for the future? Yeah, I'm not anti-capitalism. It is free market capitalism that supplies for all the mission work that my wife and I do, over 100 Bible schools, orphans in several African countries. Tonight when you go to bed and you kiss your children goodnight, wife goodnight, just remember that everybody here is not just the people you serve, they're moms and dads too. The grandparents, the children. And at the end of the day, you know, they just want you to do unto them as you want done unto you. God bless you all.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Renee I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
That's okay. Good evening.
Would you state your name for the record?
My name is Rene Tiamson.
Thank you.
I'm one of the homeowners in that located in the Ackerman project where you're going to be having some changes. My question is, when you're going to do this construction, are you also going to incorporate a system that accounts the future of the sea level going up, since we all know that we're going to have, because of the climate change, the sea level is going to go up. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Kathleen Capola. Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. As you know, I've been here a lot, and I just want to let you know, one morning I woke up and got the mail. And in the mail was CCU, and they gave me 2 bills, totaling $23-some thousand, plus a few hundred more, for my house and for a lot that Don and I bought probably 25, 30 years ago. That cost us, what, $2,000. Now you want me to pay you $11,628 for that privilege of owning a piece of Port Charlotte property. Shameful. Mr. LaPointe, or Dr. LaPointe, who did your study, is known as a fan of sewers. No solid evidence that a working septic system pollutes. However, when 400,000 gallons of untreated sewage spills all over US 41 in Sarasota, now this is evidence. Dave stole some of my thunder here, but more than 900,000 gallons of raw sewage flowed into Sarasota Bay after a violent December storm forced an open city pipe. Summer rain Daytona Beach, equipment failure in Jacksonville prompted more than 250,000 gallons of human waste to spill from the sewers last year. Boca Raton, pressurized pipe gushed out 50,000 gallons untreated wastewater, while another 55,000 gallons spewed from the Phonics Spring manhole in nearby Bruce Creek. Sewage spills are emblematic of failing wastewater systems across Florida, which is grappling with aging infrastructure and no clear solution for funding for a fix. We have that right here in Charlotte County with our old and decaying sewer system. During the past decade, deteriorating sewers have released 1.6 billion gallons of wastewater, much of it polluting the state's estuaries and oceans. Nice, huh, guys? According to a Gatehouse media analysis of state environmental data, more than 370 million gallons of that was completely untreated, raw waste sewage. Experts say the sewage has fed the blue-green algae blooms, wreaking havoc on Florida's estuaries, and has exaggerated red tide in the Gulf of Mexico. Amid historic growth, environmental sphere, it will only get worse. We are at a point where sewers need to be replaced and have been for some time now, says Glenn Compton, chairman of Minnesota 88, an environmental advocacy organization in Southwest Florida, which I believe some of you have served with these people. Until the local governments make it a priority, we're going to continue seeing these spills. Something needs to be done. You won't have that with septic systems. My septic system fails on one person in one house, and I get it fixed. An analysis of those reported spills shows Florida sewers failed nearly 23,000 times over the past 10 years. The systems leaked enough human waste to fill about 2,400 Olympic-sized swimming pools, ladies and gentlemen. The top cause for the spills was breakage, often from tree root intrusion, and by the deterioration of aging lines, which we have here in Charlotte County, nearly 80 years old in some communities. Households contributed by rinsing fats such as bacon grease down the sink and flushing baby wipes. Big problem. which can clog pipes and force ruptures, like the one that pushed 80,000 gallons of untreated wastewater into Bradenton's Wares Creek this January. Nice. Nice for our tourists to come down. Utility officials recognize the problem, but say their hands are tied. They're trying to extend the life of sewers with patchwork repairs. That's because it would require hundreds of billions, I repeat, billions of dollars to fix what's there now. Boils down to money. Its pipe is all underground. Out of sight, out of mind. Nobody bothers with utilities until they don't work. Most sewers in Florida use gravity to usher waste from homes and businesses to neighborhood lift stations, where it's stored and pumped into pressurized mains, which then takes the sewage to the treated plant. Municipalities have hundreds of miles of these sewer lines buried beneath our ground. When Florida first introduced sewers, it was common for the pipes to be made from baked clay, cast iron later on, and now it's mostly PVC. But many systems throughout the state are similar to the older lines.
Thank you.
Do you get my drift, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Deborah Drew. Okay, I just let the record show Deborah Drew is opted not to speak. Last card I have is Robert
Mr. Chair?
O'Lee.
Yeah, point of order, she elected not to speak, but just for the record, she's against the project. Yeah, I want to make sure it's on the record.
Thank you.
Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Based on your board expresses, I don't think you guys care what I have to say or anybody else for that matter, all right? I've lived here for 21 years, lived by Lake Worthing, Collinswood, great neighborhood. Up to 3-4 years ago, you never saw any for sale signs. You guys came in with this sewer idea, and we're inundated with for sale signs, empty lots and everything else. People can't afford this thing. Last meeting we had, 3 years ago, I told you, you guys were on the verge of maybe bankrupting Charlotte County with these projects that never end, that you have underfunded. You don't have the money for it, you don't know where it's coming, but yet you still pass all these projects. We went through the Murdoch Village fiasco years ago, and it's still a fiasco. You guys don't learn, you don't listen, you don't care what the people have to say, one ear and out the other. That's just the truth of the matter. So you got a lot of frustrated people here, and you guys don't care. We read faces. There's a board. You hate being there. We know that. You don't want to hear this. We're against this. It's not good for us. Most of us can't afford it. Our systems work. If the septic system breaks down, we repair it. It affects nobody else but us. It doesn't affect anybody else. Sewer system breaks down, it affects a lot of people. I mean, there's no report showing that sewer systems are effective much more than septic systems. I keep wondering how many of you guys have offshore banking accounts. I really do. It's a thought. I'm from Chicago. Okay? Chicago taught everybody about politics, money, programs that don't work. That's a city that's ready to go bankrupt. They'll follow the same role that Detroit did. You know, and Illinois, my home state, more people leaving there along with New York State and California than any other states in the country. Why? Overtaxation. You're getting taxed like crazy. Okay? You guys are not stupid. You wouldn't be in the position you're in if you were. But you make us stupid for voting us in. Because you're not listening to us. The bottom line is, we live in a very underpopulated area. At least a third of those lots are empty. Another third of them are snowbirds. They're only there for 2, 3, 4 months. Where I live, I'm there 21 years. No permanent neighbor next to me or behind me. You know, they rent the house out periodically. So who's using the system? It's going to be overflooded? No way, you know. I wish you guys would learn. I wish you guys would give the people a break. I don't think you will, but again, it's a hope. I wish we could all say we would have a good night, but I don't think we'll have a good night after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One remaining card. Again, this is a public hearing. If anyone else would like to address the board has not spoken yet, you need to fill out a card. They're available at the back of the room. The last card I have right now is Ann Lowe. Good evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have several things to say to the Board of Commissioners as well as the County Administrator. I have been living here for the past 32 years. During that time, I had my septic tank, of course, pumped several times. There were certain repairs, pipes. The most recent one was the lid. No other problem. There was also years ago a company from Orlando that had checked the soil, the septic, and everything else, and they said everything is perfect. Now, where I have a serious problem is this. You all are running CCU. Now, in the past, we requested financial statements on numerous occasions. Of course, nothing had been received. You're supposed to, at the same time, represent residents of Charlotte County. Are you doing that, or is there a conflict of interest? Good question, I would say. Also, several years ago, you had brought in a vice president for CCU. He arrived from Texas. Later on, he also brought in the family. Immediately, he had given you assessment of the infrastructure. He had also recommended to all of you to immediately start repairing it. All of you had such a severe problem with that individual that he had resigned and moved himself as well as his family out of Florida. At that time stating that we, all of us in here, will be in serious trouble. Furthermore, I want to specify something else. General Development had registered a restriction on a title for each individual living here. There are two separate kinds of restrictions. One is an easement. The easement is usually where you have the power lines. Yes, FPL has the right to enter that location for repairs, whatever, transformer blows up or whatever. That's fine. Why? Because we are using the electricity, and yes, we have a benefit from it. But then you have something registered on the title, which is called a setback. Setback is that the individual, the owner, cannot, let's say, put a storage shed in the front or high trees. That is because of the obstruction of the view. Therefore, on a setback, no one has the right to put a foot on that property. These people, every owner, is cutting the grass, maintaining the property, and there is no way you could even legally enter that property. Now you have an attorney on a board. Perhaps he'll be good enough to check into that and straighten the board itself. You do not allow people to get off the grid and use well system, which is good a lot of location. And now you're forcing people to pay for sewer. Now I'll give you an example. If I have a company manufacturing shoes, and I'm selling the shoes and doing really well, so I want to increase the production and therefore change the line and therefore the machinery. Do you honestly believe that I have the right to turn around and every individual that purchased a pair of shoes from me has to now contribute to replace the equipment and the machinery? Think about that for a minute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, this is a public hearing. If you have not filled out a speaker card, you would need to do that. I'm going to ask staff at the back of the room, do you have any additional speaker cards? No, Marty? No additional speaker cards. Last call. If you haven't filled out a speaker card, you need to do that. Last call.
Mr. Chairman, I see no one else rising. I move to close the public hearing.
A motion is second to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Hearing none, passes unanimously. Okay. Who has been taking notes and who's prepared to start addressing some of the questions? Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rudy, if this goes through, start and finish dates.
As mentioned earlier.
Hit your button.
As mentioned earlier, start date, contract to be going out for bid early this next year, this winter, and then contract to start as soon as possible after that. And just like East-West Spring Lake, this is a multi-phase process. We have to go ahead and install new water lines, transfer services over to new water line, install sewer lines, transfer services over to new sewer line, remove the old water lines, and then also don't forget there's also total road repaving and also swale restoration. So it's about a 5-year process.
Okay, I got some follow-up questions for that, for those answers. Number one, if you were shutting down water and shutting everything down completely, it would be faster. But because you have to phase it in other words, you've got to construct things that are usable before you deconstruct things that are being used. So just as it took forever on Harbor Boulevard to get the road done, it was because you were putting in water and correcting sewer pipes and doing all those things while you were moving traffic, while people were still using those facilities every single day.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Same as East-West Spring Lake. Same thing.
And the road portion is not being paid for by this assessment.
Correct.
The road portion is being done separately through other funding sources, not this assessment.
Correct.
Okay. The $11,500 is a fixed amount of money that is guaranteed to the ratepayer, to the person who's being affected, to the owner of the ERC. That is the guaranteed maximum price for that person if they pay outright or if they pay the $50 a month for 20 years.
$575.
Sorry, $575 per year for 20 years. But that's $50. That's roughly $50 a month. I'm sorry, didn't want to round up. $575 a year for 20 years. Thank you for hesitating when I was incorrect.
We actually have included a prepayment option in there, so you can prepay, but unlike if you pay with your ad valorem assessment, you will not get a discount. So if you decide to prepay, you won't have the discount that you would normally get with your ad valorem taxes.
I understand what you're saying. The 4% is not there if you're prepaying, right? Gotcha. The assessment starts in 2020. To the person who said, we've known about this since 1968, well, I was 6 years old in 1968, so I'm not taking credit for the mistakes of that county commission. I'm not taking credit for the mistakes of the 1992 to 96 commission when they balked at putting in sewers. I am taking credit for 2014 when I finally got people to get off the stick and say we have to do something. I also want to dispel rumors incorrectly. This has nothing to do with the financial stability of the utility. In fact, a year ago, I think, I said we need to have separate utility meetings. We wear two hats. We are county commissioners. We run the business of the county. The other hat we wear is we run a utility. And I wanted quarterly utility meetings so we could flesh out exactly what the financial status was of the utility. We have some pretty big bonds that are going to retire within 5 years. Okay, so there's a lot of money that we're going to save and having to pay on interest, and we're very carefully taking on new debt, very carefully, not because we're trying to make money, but because we have aging pipes in the ground, sewer and water, that are really a problem. And if we don't proactively fix those things, Then we're going to have pipes bursting every Sunday night and emergency crews going out there and people having issues and having to boil water. So we're trying to stay on top of the water side and also the sewer side. Mr. Rudy, how many million gallons a day do we treat at Eastport?
Eastport alone?
6?
Under 6. Total system, all 4 plants is at 6 million gallons.
6 million gallons a day for the entire county.
Yes, sir.
So 6 million gallons a day, every single day, times 365 is what we process as far as sewage and nitrogen being pulled out of the system. 6 million gallons a day.
2.2 billion gallons a year.
Okay, 2.2 billion gallons a year. So while I'm not happy about 10,000 gallons here or 8,000 gallons here, and certainly when the rains come and the system fills up, that's a problem. Mr. Rudy and his team have got together and purchased additional pumps and generators to make sure that prior to big storms, they pump down all of those areas where they know they're going to have flooding. And crews are out through the storm pumping down to make sure that those spills don't occur, and if they do, they're very, very limited in their amount. Now, when those big rains come, what do you think happens to all the sewage, all that waste that's sitting in your septic tanks? It doesn't sit there. All of that nitrogen flushes out into our waterways. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have Dr. Reeves here tonight. Dr. Reeves from Western Michigan University has done a modeling study. I urge all of you to wait maybe a day and then go on the website, it should be up from today's workshop, and view his modeling of the Ackerman waterway and see how over 40 years we've had tons and tons and tons of nitrogen that's stored up in your system right now, in your area. And it will take 10 years, but we're probably going to see 50% of it go away in the first 2 years once the septic tanks are gone and the sewers are in place. That's how much residual nitrogen is sitting in there and feeding the system. We didn't cause this problem. General development got a buy, and I'm not really happy about that. But we're trying to implement a solution, and it's a stepwise, painful, year-by-year, step-by-step solution to our area. If you go on the website, you'll see there's a 5, 10-year, and 15-year setup for the project for what we're trying to do to clean up the waterways. This is about the future generations, and unfortunately, nobody was paying their way up until now, and now we're all going to have to pay a little bit. Okay? The other part of this is I have a question about people that have put in a new system or a system with the aerobic transfer unit, the treatment units. Will there be credits for those folks if those systems are newer, or is there anything that we have in place?
We have nothing in place.
We have nothing in place for that. Okay. Sea level rise was brought up. Are we engineering the system? That was a very good question. For presumed, it's several inches over the next several decades, but let's say it goes up 1 foot in 50 years. Are we prepared with how the system is being designed for that sea level rise? And by the way, that sea level rise will also negatively affect septic systems that are coastal and proximate to the waterways.
The current system going in will be at the level of the 500-year floodplain.
500-year floodplain. Okay. The 4 questions. Is it true? Yes, the science is true. We have an ecological and environmental problem, and it's everywhere. And we're trying to address the coastal areas first. If you look and see what we've done so far with Spring Lake and also with the area that's up off Melbourne, North Shore. So we're trying to do everything coastal first and then work in off the water also. We're trying to do the oldest areas and the oldest systems first. Is it fair to all? We're trying to improve the waterways for everybody, and each area that is involved in this is going to have to pitch in, but we're trying to make it fair to all because what we're trying to do is keep the cost level. How much are the systems that they're putting in Cape Coral, Mr. Rudy?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, sir.
It's something like $28,000 or $29,000 per home. Ours is
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what were we discussing I want to say 10 years ago. I think it was $10,000. I mean, we have really tried to hold the line on the pricing. It's not what it's costing the utility. We're taking money from Restore. We're taking money from multiple sources. Somebody asked a question about bonding. We are doing state revolving fund at a very, very low interest rate. We have done everything we possibly can. We are seeking federal funding. We're seeking state funding. This is something that the governor is pushing for as far as the cleaning up the springs and also cleaning up coastal waterways. This is a statewide push. And by the way, Charlotte County, I think I'm speaking for my fellow commissioners, we're of the opinion we are the county that is in the best position for putting sewers in because we were so proactive 5 years before this governor even stepped up to the mic and said, you know, we need to do something about getting people off septics and onto sewer systems. So we are shovel ready, and that puts us in the best position. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield back because I'm sure my colleagues want to do something.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Truax, and I'll come back to this side. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple other things that I think we should take credit for and not take credit for. I've been here 28 years, and I've seen commission after commission deny the need for repair and replacement in our utility system. And this board has been pushing it since I came on in 2012. The push began, and the push continues, and the focus on repair and replacement has increased since 2014, and it continues to be put on. Because boards before us were afraid to raise rates to pay for the repair and maintenance of the system. Poor management. I'm fine to hear a lot of things that people say that you're unhappy about, and I agree with a lot of it. But the lack of facts, I don't agree with. The fact is that we have impaired water, we've been ignoring the system, and we've been focused on repairing, not just trying to get rid of the source, the point source for these nutrients. So I'm proud of our board. If I don't get reelected, I don't get reelected. But I know that we are doing the right thing for our environment and our community overall. I am sorry it's painful. But when I moved down here, I knew the soils in this community 28 years ago were not made for septic systems on 10,000 square foot lots. And I lived on septic systems up north. But they were on 3 acres, 5 acres, weren't sitting in the water table. Hell, the EPA requirements 2 feet from mean high water, right? But their recommendation is 5 feet. Why? Because the water filters through too fast, the nutrients go with it, and it ends up going out in our water bodies, in our swales. The studies have been done over the years. There was fecal coliform in the swales in the Spring Lake area. Human fecal coliform. So just because the fluid is in that tank and you don't see it, that doesn't mean the system's working. It doesn't mean the system's working, even if you don't have to pump it out. Because what happens when it filters out, it goes right in and it goes right into that water table. That's why we have environmental issues in Charlotte County. And it's been ignored for way too many years. We have increased red tide. We have increased algal blooms. We have all these things going on, and we have 700 people come to an environmental discussion on water quality in this county, and it's written up for all over the state to see, because people are concerned. You have Captains for Clean Waters constantly looking at why we have fishing problems. One of the #1 industries in our community is out there on the water. And it's a source of income for a lot of people who grew up here. I'm not ashamed of this. I know it's the truth. And I know we're doing the right thing for our community. And with that, I make a motion to approve the resolution, sir.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the final assessment resolution for the Ackerman Sewer Expansion Project. Discussion. I'm going to go to, all right, I'm going to go to my left now, Commissioner Deutsch.
Thank you. I want to thank you folks for coming out, regardless of what you think. We appreciate, we want to hear your comments. A lot of them were valid. A lot of them were a little edgy. Some of them were even inappropriate. Let me share with you, we know our responsibility, because we could easily stay home and say, hey, let's go with 75 people in the county want. We have a responsibility to 185,000 people that live in Charlotte County, plus 20, maybe 25,000 more that come and visit every year, the snowbirds, that we all affectionately love as we stand behind them and wait for the traffic light to change. But I want to share a few thoughts with you. every one of us raises our hand and takes an oath, similar to the oath I took when I enlisted in the military. And I believe, although we disagree, sometimes a lot, and sometimes we do agree, every single one of us cares about Charlotte County and is serious about doing this job to the best of our ability, as limited as it may be. In the mid-90s, this county, Charlotte County, with our tax money, and when I say our, I wasn't here in the 90s, even though I first came in the 60s, but I wasn't living here in the 90s. And when I say our commission, I don't necessarily mean the five of us, I mean the people that have the responsibility to help guide where Charlotte County is going. But in the mid-90s, Charlotte County did a study to see whether or not we should be sewered. The mid-90s. We spent millions of dollars on that, Raymond. We spent millions of dollars on that study, and that study said, and I'll be very simplistic, and I've read it. I read it some 6, 7 years ago. Charlotte County must be sewered. That's the simplistic thing. The permeability of our soil is terrible. The canals are closest to the water. What happens when it rains is terrible. We're destroying the greatest natural resource this county has, the Peace River and the Myakka River around us. Virtually, to the best of my knowledge, every year this was brought before the Board of County Commissioners. In fact, I'm going to say something I've never said publicly before. I was only on the board maybe 6 months, Ray, plus or minus 3 or 6 months, and you came around and said, hey, we got this sewer study, do you guys want to study it? You want to do with it? I said, yes, I would. I have no idea, I'd love to know what you said, Chris. I have no idea when Ray came around and spoke to each one of us privately, because it wasn't done publicly. I said yes. 3 commissioners said no. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that the 3 of them were up for re-election in another year and a half. I don't know. I'm going to guess Chris said yes. I don't know. You could tell me, couldn't you, Chris? Anyway, 2 years later, after that election, Mr. Sandrock came around again, and I said, yeah. And he said, do you want to talk about this with us now? We had a new board. We had a couple new commissioners. And we said yes, and the 5 of us agreed, and it started. And I tried to deal with facts because I'm not an environmental fanatic. I had a real estate and development company. I've lived with sewers, I've lived with septic systems, I've dealt with both. And I'm really, I'm not out to rape and pillage our environment, but I'm certainly not a fanatic for taking care of it. But we have a greater responsibility. Every single piece of factual information presented to us said, Charlotte County has to be sewered. The meeting we just had with a study which we just saw the results on, and Chris alluded to it, it's going to take 10 years to get rid of some of the nitrogen in our soil just from all of our good septic systems. Let me deal with some other facts. The estimated time life of the average septic system, some have some that last longer, some that is somewhere between 8 and 12 years. The average cost for a new septic system is beyond $10,500. It has a time life to it. They don't last. And if all of us maybe had them inspected the way we should, we'd all be in a little better shape, but they don't last. When we first dealt with this, based on my experience of selling real estate for 30 years and having a development company, I said, and I think it was probably about 7 years ago, plus or minus, I said, I should tell you, you're going to pay for this, but it's going to increase the value of your house. And I said, I think somewhere between 5 and 10%. The president of the Charlotte County put together, Board of Realtors at the time, got up and testified and said, you're wrong, Commissioner. It's going to increase the value of a property 10 to 15%. So if there's a house on this side of the street and the exact same house is on that side, and this has septic and that has sewers, and this is $200,000, this one's going to be worth $230,000. That's a fact. presented to this board, some different faces, by the head of the Board of Realtors. It was my experience, it was somewhere from 5 to 10 in the houses I sold, and there are actually some people that want to come here and buy a house. They don't want to look at a house that has septic, they only want to look at a house that's sewer. Believe it or not, talk to some of your real estate friends. Now, the bottom line is, we're trying to make this as palatable as possible, but we have a responsibility, not to just every one of the people in this room here, but to everyone that's home, and every one of our kids, and every one of their kids as we look to the future. We have some sense of responsibility about doing the best we can to help preserve the quality of this incredible paradise that we have an opportunity to live in. This board, a couple of years ago, had the courage to stand up and take the abuse, the lies, some of the disgusting, nasty things that were said to us collectively and individually because we supported the concept of sewers. And we did it because it was right. So let me tell you, don't tell us about our responsibility. I'd much rather be sitting home trying to see if they're ever going to find that treasure in Oak Island or something else silly on TV or whatever. But we're trying to do our job here, and we're trying to do it to the best of ability that we can. But every professional, scientific piece of information we have points in one direction. To preserve the future of this great county, we've got to work to put the sewers in. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Tiseo, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of good information tonight. I appreciate the public input. I'm going to try to pull this all together. First, I'd like to say I don't know if there's much we can do about the bidet. I think we're going to have to put that to the side. But well, let me clarify another question. There was a question about an aerobic system, and I read the statutes, and Florida Statute 381.00655, Section 1C. A local government or water and sewer district responsible for the operation of a centralized sewer system under Section 153.62 may grant a variance to an owner of a performance-based on-site sewage treatment and disposal system permitted by the department as long as the on-site system is functioning properly and satisfying the conditions of the operating permit. The very next sentence goes on to say, nothing in this paragraph shall be construed to require a local government or water or sewer district to issue a variance under any circumstance. However, I'd like clarification on if these aerobic systems are considered a performance-based on-site system by the department, if it's within the latitude of the board, if they are newly installed, how many are out there, and if they indeed qualify for a variance. Even though we're not required to give it, I'd like to know if those systems can be exempted.
I'll refer to council on that.
Ms. Miller?
You could grant a variance. The problem is this is an MSBU, so it would not exempt them from the assessment. It could delay them from having to connect, but they still would have to pay the assessment because they're being benefited by having the sewer line available.
Okay, so you're saying just because the line is put in front of their property, that in itself is a benefit even though they're not hooked up?
Correct.
Okay.
Excuse me, Commissioner, that's a matter of state law.
Yes, it is.
And I really do appreciate everybody coming out here. One of the reasons I won was, when I ran for public office was, truth to power. And I've heard the people speak. And, into my third year, my first term, I was pretty open in 2016 when I ran. There was some discussion about elections and consequences, and I don't disagree with that. And in 2016, it was at the heat and pinnacle of the Spring Lake sewer project. And I showed up to public forums, and some of those people are sitting here tonight, and I was grilled by them on my position as a candidate. And I said I supported the sewer expansion program as a modern way to treat urban wastewater. I was very open about that, and it was publicized in the newspaper, and my opponent was against it. So in terms of elections, full disclosure, I was out there with it, and there's people sitting right here that questioned me and grilled me on it at length at the Cultural Center and other venues. So I'm pretty much an open book when it comes to that. I mean, really, there's nothing to hide. But you're correct. These regulatory agencies that allow you to install septics in your house are the same ones that tell you need to hook up to sewer. And that's one of the odd things when I got into this job. You talk about government crossing wires or dysfunction. But even the statutes I just cited, in the same statute, it talks about the legislative intent for on-site sewage treatment, septic tanks. It is the intent of the legislature that proper management of on-site sewage and treatment and disposal systems is paramount to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. It is the intent of the legislature that where publicly owned or investor-owned sewage system is not available, the department shall issue permits for construction and installation, modification, abandonment, or repair of on-site sewage treatment and disposal systems under conditions as described in this section. Finally, it goes on to say, it is further the intent of the legislature that the installation and use of on-site sewage treatment and disposal system not adversely affect the public health and significantly degrade the groundwater or surface water. So even in the statute, they're allowing you to put up a septic system when there's not sewer available. It is a bridge in our urban centers to get to sewers because you have property rights. They cannot not allow you to build and exercise your property rights to build your home just because sewer's not available. So in the statutes, they allow you, when it's not available, to put in a permitted site. The health department does that at the state level. And the statutes go on to say the owner of a properly functioning on-site sewage treatment and disposal system, excluding an approved on-site gray water system, must connect to the system or building's plumbing to an available publicly owned or investor-owned sewage system within 365 days. So in the same statute, it says you can put in a septic system, and the same statute says if it's perfectly functioning normally, you still have to hook up to a sewer system once it's available. Port Charlotte was founded, when I went back and looked at some of the original permits, on being a sewered community. Somebody referenced in the audience, and you were correct, back in the 60s, we had a sewage treatment plant here. When you look at the permits for dredging the canals that really make Charlotte County what it is, closer to the water so people can enjoy that, those permits, when I read them from the Army Corps, had thresholds in there. When you reach certain density of septic systems, you are required to run sewer systems. That's why we have a hodgepodge of sewer systems. Some folks right close to this, closer to off of O'Hara, had sewer systems because it was required to put in. But unfortunately, in 1992, the utility and developer went bankrupt. And it is true, the county did have to purchase the utility, and we do sit as part of a publicly owned utility. We sit as the board for that utility. So it's not as if sewer never existed in this town. We were actually founded. If you look at the documents, we couldn't get a permit to develop Charlotte County. When I say we, I mean general development, unless they had a sewer plan in place. And somebody mentioned, well, why didn't they do that in 1968? Why did they fall short of installing it? The same argument can be made of us 30 years from now. People will look back and say, how come that board 30 years ago, when they had the opportunity to finish the expansion plan that was memorialized when Charlotte County was founded, why didn't they do anything about it? Now the costs are $30,000 or $40,000. So again, I heard a lot of truth tonight, but there's also a lot of history behind it. And you know, I've been in this town since 1981. I moved here when there was less than 50,000 people, and there was one light on US 41 at Harvard. Midway was a four-way stop, and where the administration building is were cows. I used to ride my bicycle to Port Charlotte High School, which just built, and it was all dirt roads over there. Look at where we've come from that, and the impact of the density. The density has arrived. It wasn't here back then. It wasn't feasible for the developer to run all those lines without the density and the population. So now here we are, 185,000 people, and we're stuck with a system that was never built out and never developed. The easy thing for the board to do is really do nothing. Really, I mean, we understand the angst. I saw it with Spring Lake when I was a candidate, and I see it tonight in this room. So really, the easy thing for us to do is just continue to do what other boards have done and not done it. There was a time when the sewer was just a few $1,000s, but they didn't take action. So as an elected official, we have to make a decision tonight. The decision is to kick the can down the road or do what other boards have done. I've looked at the data, and I've got to tell you, just at 1,800 homes, at 4,000 gallons a month average use, that's 7.2 million gallons a year getting flushed down your toilet into your front yard. I've heard a lot of discussion about your tank. Does anybody know what their drain field looks like, and if that and how it's treated? Your water, this wastewater just doesn't go into your tank. There's bacteria that work there, and the solids go to the bottom, but the effluent flows into your front yard, into your drain field, and percolates through the soil. So it just doesn't end in your tank. And if anybody can tell me, just in this 1,800 homes, again, that's 7.2 million gallons a year that you don't know if it's being treated properly. You have designs pre-1983 that sit in the water table. There is no way that that effluent is being treated. With sewer systems, we can track the gallons. If there's a spill, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the system's perfect. Some of those older system failures were old product, old design. The materials we use today are much more effective, efficient, longer lasting, and many of those spills happen through construction or man-made means. They were accidents, construction projects as we grow, and many of our spills can be attributed to man-made breaks. And it is true, there are system failures. We have some pipes that are clay pipes. So the technology has changed. It's greatly enhanced, and they're longer lasting and more dependable. So, as I said, you know, this is one of those decisions, it's gut-wrenching because it affects the pocketbook. And, you know, I get it. You know, I've got, you know, 4 kids that went through the public school. Well, 3 are still in the public school system. 1 just graduated. A lot of times people have to make the decision between, you know, how they take care of their family and paying their taxes at the end of the year, or buying their medications and things like that. It is a tough call. We offered, in this particular, I guess we refined the system after Spring Lake. This is a lockdown, as we discussed earlier, price. It's one price, no interest. The price, had it been the full price, was closer, I think, to $18,000 to $20,000.
That's closer.
Yeah, so we almost cut it in half through grants and other funding sources that were described earlier. We also put in for vacant lot owners a deferral program. I don't think that was discussed.
That was not available before.
Huh?
It was discussed, but it wasn't available at Spring Lake.
Yeah, but for this one it is.
Yes, sir, and Elder Bean.
Yeah, so some of the things we learned from Spring Lake was people with vacant lots said, well, I don't even have a house on it. It's too burdensome to have an assessment now. So what did we learn from that? Well, on these newer projects, if you have a vacant lot, you can do a complete deferment where you don't pay anything. You can defer it to a future date when the lot is sold or when it's constructed. Then if that person at that time would pay for whatever the cost is to hook up. And we did a no-interest guaranteed not to exceed over a 20-year period as well. We also developed the unity of title that if you had a vacant lot that you own next to you, you would only pay 1 hookup, not for the 2 lots, by filling out a form and combining the 2. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to make this as least impactful, even though it still impacts you. I mean, the board really took it to heart on the burden, the financial burden that it would cause. And we've taken steps to minimize. And while, you know, it's a great deal, if you don't have the money to pay for it, it's still not great for you. We get that. But at some point, we have to make a decision on what we think is the best for Charlotte County's future. I can tell you there is no doubt in my mind that septic systems, the proliferation of septic systems, is not the future of our urban areas here in Charlotte County. They may work in the rural areas on acreage And I just pulled up a Charlotte County permit report. Through 2017, 18, and 19, we're averaging about 600 septic repairs a year that are permitted through the Department of Health that are failing. Those are just the ones that are reported. We don't know which ones are unreported that are failing. So septics fail too, because we're issuing permits and we track that data. So when it comes to water quality and nitrogen, and correct me if I'm wrong, septic systems does not filter out nitrogen.
Correct.
So you have nitrogen, which feeds algal blooms, potentially feeds red tide and blue-green algae as a nutrient source. And septic systems do not treat nitrogen. Unless you have a newer system, they have nitrogen, and you are correct, Mrs. Hutt, there are newer systems out there. When the soils and when the conditions are right, you can do a nitrogen-reducing system. It reduces but does not eliminate. Sewer systems eliminate. It takes the sewage, takes it to a plant, it's treated to an acceptable standards by the EPA, and then it's discharged, whether it's reused or into the injection well or other places. I'm sure our utility director can give more detail on that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Those three methods are used for disposal of effluent through reclaim system, deep injection well, or through fused spray fields.
So what we know is even though you can flush your toilet and it works, the nitrogen will never go away. And we've seen enough studies. It's in the soil. We've done test wells. We've had those results publicly reported. So I'm certainly a skeptic when it comes to assessing our taxpayers any new fee or assessment. And again, this is just one of those things as a board member, we're going to have to live with and accept the consequences. I just want you to know that I've done my due diligence in terms of reviewing this as best as humanly possible that I could do. And I know the board has taken action with consequences to continue to move the ball forward in advancing this program. And while it doesn't help us today to say, well, what good is it for future generations? I got to pay today. That's a hard one. That is a hard one. But we have to start somewhere incrementally. And I think that this is the best way to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. First of all, I'm going to wrap it up here very quickly. I'm not going to repeat everything my colleagues have mentioned, obviously. Thank you for coming this evening. It means a lot to us to hear what your concerns are. I do believe that it's going to be very important for each and every one of you to keep track of what we are doing right now as far as monitoring. As I said, the board meeting today, we got some very good information on water quality monitoring relative to septics in the Ackerman area. There is an impact. I'm an engineer. I'm a professional engineer. I'm retired. I retired in 2010. I've studied septic systems. I know where they work and where they don't. This was not the appropriate location in Charlotte County in Port Charlotte because of the size of the lots and the soils for septic systems. They're called on-site treatment and disposal systems. They dispose of the waste. When you flush the toilet, it goes away. But it does not treat, and that's the problem. And the nitrogen loadings, we have data, we have evidence of what it's doing to our water quality. And it's not the only source of nitrogen. We understand that. That was mentioned earlier too about ag. We understand that. But we have to work on what we can work on. And that's quite honestly these septic systems. I appreciate my colleagues and all your attempts to address their comments. Commissioner Truex, you have a follow-up?
Just two quick things. One, those nitrogen removal systems run between $15,000 and $18,000. There's only one approved in the state of Florida. And in my life, I'm working in that arena to try to get more systems approved. And DEP and DOH have issues communicating with one another, but that is in process. So hopefully there'll be some better options down the road, and maybe those numbers will come down. And the other thing I wanted to point out is we've identified that there's issues with fertilizers, and we have we have put in place ordinances that minimize the ability to put fertilizers down and granulars can't be used during the rainy season. So we understand that, and we've tried to protect. We can't keep you homeowners from going out and buying stuff at Home Depot or Lowe's and putting it down. But all the applicators are required to follow that law, and they're only allowed to use liquid of certain types during those times of year. So I just wanted to put those two things out.
Very good. Everybody is all set. Commissioner, Mr.
I have one more comment. Yeah, just real quick. On those performance-based systems, the takeaway from this is that, we want to learn for the next phase. I would like just to make a note that county staff get back with us on one-on-ones to find out about that performance-based variance and how that would play in possibly in future expansions and how it interacts with the MSBU. I'd like to get the details on that. Thank you.
How the state law reads and how it relates. All right, Commissioners, we have a motion and a second to approve the final assessment resolution for the Acronym Sewer Expansion Project. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Commissioners, we have completed the public hearing for this evening. As a result, this hearing is adjourned.